Today we're going to look at a passage in Romans chapter 12, and we're going to look at the first couple verses of this chapter. Paul begins here by saying, "Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship." He begins by talking about our responsibility as Christians, that we are offering our life as a sacrifice to God. Not like the sacrifices that were offered under the Old Testament with the animal sacrifices, where those animals were killed and then offered as a sacrifice to God. We offer ourselves as a sacrifice, but we do so as a living sacrifice, where we are continuing to live our life in a way that is given over to Him. Well, if we do that, if we give our life over to Him, necessarily that's going to mean we're going to be different from those around us in the world. And that's what he would talk about in the next verse, in verse 2. "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect." There is a temptation at all times for us to be like those around us, to conform to the world around us, because if we fit in, then we're accepted by, or we will be accepted by those who are around us. It's a lot easier to just go with the flow and just follow along with everyone else. But as Christians, we're not to be conformed to the world. We're to be transformed. We are to be different. Again, we are presenting our bodies as a living sacrifice to God. So we are to be different from the world. We might think of this in terms of the sins of the world. The world is engaged in sin. The world has rejected God and departed from God. We are not to live like the world and engage in the same types of sins that the world commits. We are not to have the same priorities that the world has. The world focuses on the things of this life, and our goal, our priority needs to be on spiritual things and on eternal life. The world is filled with things that people are worried about, things that people are fearing, that they're afraid of. And in an uncertain world, especially that we live in now, there is a lot of anxiety. There is a lot of fear. Christians are to be different. It's not that we're unconcerned by what is going on around us, but we shouldn't have the same anxiety and the same fear that the world has, because we know we're following Christ. We've already given our life to Him. And ultimately, He is going to reward us. He is going to save us. So we are to be different from the world. So don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed. If we are Christians and we have given our life over to Him, then we need to remember that commitment that we made. Don't look to the world. Don't try to fit in with the world and be like the world and follow after the sins of the world and the worry of the world, the anxiety and the fear and everything that people get caught up in. Don't be like the world. Instead, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that we learn to think like God and on the ways of God rather than thinking as the world thinks. And Paul said that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. Prove what the will of God is. Follow the will of God. Live it out in your life. That's what we're all called to do. So as we go through our life, we face challenges. We face things that other people might fear, other people might be anxious about, things that the world might prioritize that we know we shouldn't as Christians. Let's be committed to be different. Not be like the world, but instead of conforming to the world, let's be transformed and conform our will and our life to Christ.